Well, friends, we've been in a discussion now for the Christmas season called What's for Christmas? And it's been this conversation of being hungry to see what God is meaning for us to experience. I used the story a little bit last week. We always love, as parents, we watch our kids as they sit with excitement with the present in front of them, and they just wonder what's inside. They shake it, they feel it, right? Maybe smell it too. Right? I don't know if smell any of the gifts, but they just imagine, they wonder what's inside. They open it and it's right? Or it's like, no. Hopefully none of that, but I think as we reach the Christmas season, sometimes we hold the present of what we celebrate and we kind of already know what's inside, but I have just begun to wonder, what if we can maybe almost rewind time and just pretend like we're opening the Christmas gift for the very first time? And this morning I want to begin our conversation actually with some very, very, very old words from a gentleman who lived a very, very long time ago. You see, throughout the story of the Old Testament, there reaches a point where God has allowed his people to return. After a period of time, we have King David and then King Solomon, and then we see this giant rift, this split of the people of God. And over time, what happens is they both fall to other nations as God is saying, listen, return to me so I can fulfill my promises that I meant for you to be. And they say, no, we'd rather do it our way. And so God says, listen, if you're pushing me away, understand that you're going to fall. You're going to fall and you're going to get hurt. It's going to be painful. And they say, we'll be fine. And after hundreds and hundreds of years, other nations conquer them. But there reaches a season where God says, all right, now it's time to rebuild. Maybe you're familiar with the stories of Ezra and Nehemiah, folks like that who God brings back to Jerusalem and Judea area and begin rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and parts of the city itself. And if you can, rewind, if the flux capacitor in your mind is working fairly well this morning, you can remember a couple of months ago, we spent time in the story of a life of a guy named Haggai. And you see what happened is that after all the rebuilding had taken place, God says, listen, what about my temple? I mean, I've brought up my promises of rebuilding your home, and I'm patient, I'm gracious, but have you forgotten already what happens when you walk away from me? And so we see what happens is God uses this one prophet, this gentleman named Haggai, to bring this word of, what are you thinking, everybody? And then after him comes another gentleman named Zechariah. And you see what happens is for the first 8 chapters of his book, he is encouraging and pushing the people to rebuild the temple. And they begin working on it after Haggai. And then it becomes Zechariah's turn. He's encouraging them. And they're facing all sorts of challenges. They're running out of money. They're running out of resources. All the people with the skills are walking away. Other people are not liking them for doing what they're doing. It's just nothing is coming as planned. But for 8 chapters, Zechariah is like, let's press on. God is going to do this for 8 whole chapters. And I encourage you, if you're looking for something to read, if you go to Matthew and then just back up 2 books of the Bible into the Old Testament, you'll find Zechariah's book, all 14 chapters. And for the first half, he's saying, look, we're almost there. A few more bricks, we're almost there. We're almost there. Well, then eventually the temple is finished. Yay. But then people, after some time, get restless again. And what happens is in Zechariah's book, the gears shift because in chapter 9, he begins talking about something else. And instead of looking ahead to the temple, it's already been finished. He now brings the people word from God about a kingdom that is coming, and with it, a king. And so we're going to read a little bit in Zechariah chapter 9, verses 9 to 16 together. He says this, rejoice, O people of Zion. Shout in triumph, O people of Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, yet he is humble, riding on a donkey, riding on a donkey's colt. And maybe that stirs up a little bit of your memory because we often read those verses during Jesus' triumphal entry around Easter. But what's fascinating is that for them, they're actually reminded of a moment with King David, because in King David's old age, before he passed away, everyone was anxious for who's going to be king next. Like we just had the greatest season of our nation under King David. What's happening next? And everyone's panicking. What's happening? And then he decides for Solomon to be king next. And then to kind of usher out the news, he puts Solomon on his personal mule, which at that time in that part of the world was a pretty rare and prized animal. Puts him on the animal, and with a grand parade, parades him through the city, and everyone is in awe of, that's going to be our next king. And so as Zechariah says these words, they're reminded of what they've already seen, but they're also a little tickled of, wow, what might come next? It says, I will remove the battle chariots from Israel and the war horses from Jerusalem. I will destroy all the weapons used in battle, and your king will bring peace to the nations. His realm will stretch from sea to sea and from the Euphrates River to the ends of the earth, because of the covenant I made with you, sealed with blood. I will free your prisoners from death in a waterless dungeon. Come back to the place of safety, all you prisoners who still have hope. I promise this very day that I will repay 2 blessings for each of your troubles. Judah is my bow, and Israel is my arrow. Jerusalem is my sword, and like a warrior I will brandish it against the Greeks. The Lord will appear above his people. His arrows will fly like lightning. The sovereign Lord will sound the ram's horn and attack like a whirlwind from the southern desert. The Lord of heaven's armies will protect his people, and they will defeat their enemies by hurling great stones. They will shout in battle as though drunk with wine. They will be filled with blood like a bowl, and drenched with blood the corners of the altar. On that day, their God will rescue his people, just as a shepherd rescues his sheep. This is a profound moment, because what's happening next is Zechariah is saying, listen, on that day, he's looking ahead to the future, and Zechariah lives about 500 years before Jesus, and so this is a little while ahead before Christ comes, but he's saying, listen, on that day, and if you continue to read chapters 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, that's a reiterated phrase, on that day. On that day, our king will come, and he will bring arrows like lightning. Just use your imagination, a thunderous clash of power and might. On that day, he will come, and he's going to take away our weapons, because we won't need to defend for ourselves, because he will do the fighting. On that day, the Lord will finally bring about his promise. On that day, he's going to take care of our enemies. He'll destroy those who challenge us. On that day, our God will come and our King will come, and we will be victorious again, and it will be grand and glorious, and it will be powerful as justice is brought again into the world. I mean, that is the voice of Zechariah. He's speaking these words to the people, and they're hearing them. And for generations, they cling to them. And this morning, even though we read that often during Easter, I read it this morning because our King has come. But he didn't hold in his hand arrows of lightning. He didn't throw massive boulders at cities and other kingdoms. He came not in loud clashing thunder and power, but he came as a baby in a manger. Our King has come. But it's not quite what we imagined. And even the people during Jesus' time struggled with that. And you see, friends, I believe in a very real way that we have greatly missed what God is up to. I think in some kind of way, we almost shrug off the baby in the manger element of the Christmas story out of familiarity, but I believe also because we miss what God is up to. Because if we knew it, then the same excitement in the same way that we revere the symbol of the cross in our faith, we would have towards the manger. We drive around in our cars, on the bumper sticker, there'd be the cross, but then right next to it would be a symbol of a manger. People are walking around showing off their cross tattoos. They'd say, but look, I've got one of the manger too. And I think we miss what God is up to so much of the time because what he is trying to share with us, what he's trying to get us to see, is so incredible. It's so incredible that it required angels to deliver the news, which was our whole conversation last Sunday. And you see, this morning, I want us to begin to lean into this very important question of why the manger. Because this baby didn't come into the world looking much like what Zechariah had shared. Did God make a mistake? What are we missing? You see, there's this old story of this young king, and when he came into the throne, he had kind of the duty of finding a wife, someone who would be his queen. And you see, one day as he's out touring his kingdom, he sees from a distance this young woman, and oh man, she caught his eye. His heart immediately was just blown into the sky for her and wanting her to be his wife. And you see, he finds out this young lady, she lives on the very edge of his kingdom and is a part of a farmer's family, and they're quite poor. And he wrestled. How do I get her to marry me? And he brings us back to his advisors, to his council, and there he asks them, how do I get her to be my wife? And they say, how about you let her see your power, right? Send down your chariots, send down your army and your commanders and your general. Let her just see the magnitude of your power. Let her see how strong you are, and have them swoop her up in a chariot and bring her back to the castle, to the kingdom. And other advisors were there like, what if you showed them just your glamour and your royalty and your wealth as king? Send down people dressed in golden cloths and robes. Even yourself, have a giant parade and just allow people in the kingdom to ooh and awe at you pass by. And maybe she'll hear their oohs and ahs and she'll fall for you then. Maybe then she'll want to be your queen. Others said, let her see how heartfelt you are. Send down your 100 greatest musicians and trumpeters. Have them put on a grand performance for her, to just let her be serenaded into love with you. And they go on and on and on, sharing all these ideas of what they could do. And maybe you're in the room like, okay, this is an idea. I don't know if I could afford the gold robe, so I'll write these other ideas down. But he says, you know what, I got an idea. But I'm not going to tell you, except for in the morning you'll see what my plan is. Whose idea did he take? Mine or his? Well, the next morning the king comes out of his chambers. Instead of his royal robes, he is dressed in secondhand clothes that he found in the garbage. What are you doing? He said, if I'd done those things, I would certainly win her hand in marriage. But I just didn't want to win her hand. I wanted to win her heart. I wanted to win her heart. You see, a lot throughout the Gospels, we read these moments where Jesus is spending time with people, and he gets a nickname, and I just happen to wonder if he smirks when he hears it. They call him it to degrade him, but I wonder if he took some pride in it as they looked at him and said, "You friend of sinners." See, what is bewildering, astonishing, and seemingly unbelievable is that God himself stooped so low. That way he could win our heart. And I am convinced that Jesus came in a manger to win your heart as a friend. He came to be close and approachable. Could you imagine hearing the stories of Zechariah's words and just creating that picture of the king that will one day come, but then one day angels show up and they invite you to come meet him, and your finger is almost too big for his little hand to hold. That is the Christ. That is the Messiah. Like, this is the one God said who would come to rescue us. Gotta be honest, I expected it to be a little bit different. And you see, what matters so much in this conversation is why was he trying to befriend humanity? Why was he wanting to be so approachable and so close? And you see, so much of the time in Jesus' conversations and running with people, he tries to explain to them this incredible, important reality of what's happened in the world and in the human soul. The most special kind of descriptive moment is when Jesus is talking to several different religious leaders. As he's talking, he spends time with Nicodemus, for example, and other people have these ideas of what God is up to. But Jesus begins to simply explain over and over again that the problem that you are experiencing in the world is not out there, it is inside of you. You feel dead in this world, not because of other people, but because death is in you. It is in you. The darkness, the anxiousness, the weight, the pain, the selfishness, it is in you. And Jesus came as a friend. He came as a friend so we might receive the truth about our sin. Because let's face it, that's not fun to hear. But it is the reality of where we are as people before God and in this world. And he makes it clear. He makes it clear. You are both victim, but you are also very guilty. Because you are victim of the generations before you that chose sin and how it has affected you, how Adam and Eve fell into sin. But understand that any of us who were to take their place would do the exact same thing. But also to recognize that not only do you live as consequence and repercussions of other people's sin, but you yourself continue it on. You choose it. Even though you know the destructions it has caused, and yet you still pursue it. And Jesus came as a friend to help us to understand this reality that our souls, the part of you that is underneath the rest of you, Not this kind of floating thing in the world, not this kind of mystic kind of force inside of us, the sense, no, our soul, our who we are, that is underneath the rest of us, that part of us that drives us, that leads us, that forms us, that guides us often, that creates our values and our decisions, the things of us that make it us are very shattered. And Jesus tried to get us to awaken to this reality that we are dead inside. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how nice you try to make the outside, because the inside is still dead. Like trying to fix up a vehicle. No point to give it a brand new paint coat and some metallic splash and some cool pinstripes. No reason to put new rims and cool tires on it, put a cool sound system in it if the engine is broken and not running at all and has mice living inside of it. And Jesus came as a friend to awaken us to this reality. And it bothered people, and if we can be honest, it bothered us because we would have rather had a ruler. And let me tell you why. People would rather have a ruler take care of the problem that is out there because a friend would want to help them see that the problem is in here. And we'd rather hide behind this idea of Jesus as this ruler and us as a slave to him, because it allows us to have this idea that he will do all of our battles. He will take care of all of our problems. He will just kind of fix all this up. If I go to church, if I be a nice person, if I smile when I really don't, if I hold my tongue when I really want to let it go, if I'm nice and I give and I'm generous and I serve and I do all these nice things and just the life of me looks good, then maybe Jesus will be a steamroller and just kind of smooth out the road ahead. But he didn't come as a ruler. No, believe me, he came as a king, and he is king, and he took care of a big battle that we could never take care of. And that was one of the things that he reminded us always, that his sacrifice on the cross and resurrection defeated death, gave us a way as very broken people to have a relationship with God and be and receive the gift of salvation. But understand that it is in that friendship with him that he wants to keep the conversation going. And saying, yes, you've been saved, but. And we often want to hide behind this idea of God as this unfair ruler. We often want to hide behind this construction of this idea that is this distance between him and us. It allows us to be able to pull ourselves up from our own bootstraps. It allows us in our age to grow and mature and mature and mature and to lean into our own strength more than his. It allows us to very easily pull out a big, thick book of measuring ourselves and say, wow, I am doing life well, or oh, man, I am hitting the park, or I'm doing good. And we measure ourselves by so many wrong things where Jesus was so clear about your heart. And we would very much rather him be this distant off in the far ruler than a friend who is close, that is with us on our good days and our not so good days. A friend who has permission to knock on the door a little bit and say, hey, how you just treated that person wasn't very nice, was it? How you just spoke to your loved one, how you just, well, that wasn't that nice, was it? It wasn't respectful of your parents, was it? You didn't listen to your mom or dad. You weren't respectful to your elders. And the honest truth is that we hear these words that Jesus is close, but maybe we don't want him that close because we don't want him to see what is happening in here. And we don't want him to see it because we ourselves don't know what to do with it. And we ourselves don't know how to fix it. And we ourselves don't know what to do with the thoughts that linger. We don't know what to do with the selfishness and the sin that we try to sweep under the rug, that we try to hide. We don't know. And so we'd rather him be this king who sits on a throne than a baby in a manger that we can go hold the hand of, because this is personal and close and real. And is a friendship. Friends, I call us, I invite us to make this change within us in the hunger that we have to know God and to belong to Jesus. Because understand, as a ruler, we still just get to measure ourselves by what we do and what we don't do. But when we start to belong to him as a friend, we now usher in this relationship where we belong to him more than we belong to ourselves. And we say, I'm yours. I'm yours. And friends, this morning, I get to preach from a different Bible than what I normally do. This one is old and kind of has some crinkles in it and makes that sound when you open it. You know what I'm talking about. This morning I preached from the Bible that I was given when I was ordained as a pastor, as a minister. And I remember I was given a charge to bring the truth of God to his people. And this morning, I am charged with the greatest truth I can ever give you. The reality is that many, many people will live as a servant to ruler, and they're always going to be left wondering, why isn't there more? Is this it? But I tell you, that the deepest feeling that you can ever have is knowing that Jesus is friend. I remember once I traveled when I was just a kid. We went down to Florida for the first time, and growing up in the Midwest, I'd seen apple trees and apple orchards every day of my life, and I mean no exaggeration by that. On the way to school, on the way to the grocery store, even going to my grandparents' house, in their backyard was an apple orchard, right? Which was so much fun to shoot with a BB gun. But anyway, as kids, always seen apple trees. And I remember we traveled to Florida, and for the first time seeing an orange grove and seeing an orange tree. And I know there's all these different variants and different types of apples and even oranges too. But for the most part, generically speaking, apple trees and orange trees are almost identical. They are seemingly difficult to even try to pick apart which one is which. But you notice they're very, very different when they begin to bear some fruit. Because one brings out this citrus, delicious, that makes wonderful juice with all sorts of pulp. Amen. Who loves the pulp? Drives Aaron insane. But anyway, that makes wonderful juice. It is delicious, but one makes this orange sphere, but the other one makes these beautiful, deep red, delicious apples. You see, the trees and the foliage and even the way their branches and their bark all look are so much the same. What is very, very different is what is deep inside of them. And I'm convinced that many people go throughout their life believing they're walking close with Jesus, but they keep on bearing these orange spheres. And they're like, why are mine orange? And all those over there, they're all red. And what am I missing? Because yeah, I know the Bible. Yeah, I go to church. Yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I believe in this stuff. But it looks like these people over here with these red delicious apples, it seems like they just like, there's a fire. And it seems like they're alive. Not that life is just easy and glamorous, but it seems like they have this strength and this hope and this peace. And friends, the reality is that we can attempt to measure what it is that we have with God by some of the external things of us trying to do right and be right. But let me tell you, you will forever bear very different fruit. Because of what's on the inside. A very real friendship with God. One that allows you to come close, to hear his words that you have messed up, to hear his words that you have not done it right. But be able to come close and say, I'm so sorry. But thank you for the conviction and the truth. Because Jesus said, I've come so you'd have truth, and the truth would set you free. Thank you for the truth that is in me. And how badly I want to live in relationship with you. That way the love that you have would bring me to life. Would bring me to life. This last week, I was in my morning route driving around on this big yellow taxi picking up kids to go to school. And I just so happened to be assigned to this route as a substitute, and I even had a monitor, an assistant on the bus with me, and a wonderful lady who loves Jesus. And we often talk about our faith together. And I was driving the other morning picking up some kids and going on neighborhoods and whatnot. And the other morning, I got some kids in the seats behind me, and we're making our way to the school. I remember a few seats back, I could overhear this boy talking to the assistant and to the monitor, and simply said, I don't want to go to school. Why don't you want to go to school? Because I have no friends. No one likes me. You know what she did? She said, scoot over. And she sits on the seat right next to him. And she says, I have a friend. You do? I have a friend who never leaves me. I have a friend who sees the sides of me that even I don't like. And yet he still loves me. You do? I've got a friend who never walks away. And when I need a shoulder to cry on, he's there. And when I can't have the strength inside of me to walk, it's like he's there to lift me. I've got a friend who is always close. I've got a friend who is always telling me what's the right next thing to do. Who is he? Oh, his name is Jesus. And I'm driving that bus, and I'm like, oh my word, this is amazing. What a friend we have in Jesus, church. But if you let him get that close, because that's the reality of the conversation, is that if you let him get that close, he wants to. But will you let him? Because maybe you've grown up your whole life and you know this. But maybe the words of Jesus as my friend are a little hard to say because you've never known it. And let me tell you, it is the greatest thing you can ever know. And it is the greatest thing you can ever pass on to your children, your grandchildren, to your neighbors, to your coworkers. It is the greatest thing we can ever give to those around us. And I implore you, ask these questions of Jesus. Do I see you more as a ruler who I'm just trying to serve and to please? Or are you a friend who is close and you tell me the words that you love me and I believe them? And I believe them. Are you the one who is making me strong, or am I trying to be strong on my own? Sure, I've matured in my faith. Sure, I've been reading the Bible for a long time. But have we forgotten that the life we have is only because of Him? Take it away and we are nothing. Take away our friendship with Jesus and we're nothing. Does that ring true? Close your eyes for me just for a moment. And I want us just to have this time of talking to God.